Hey folks, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. And it is Monster Week here on YouTube. Monster Week is an annual community event created and organized by Jenny D and Pointy Hat to bring together RPG creators on YouTube. And this year's theme is going to be dragons. So I'm going to dive into the topic of Dragonflight, specifically using the 5e game engine to depict combat between dragons and dragon riders while flying at high speeds and overland movement. So 5e is a fantastic game engine for role-playing games, but it has its limitations. A lot of the mechanics of D&D 5e are tied up in tactical combat on grid maps at the 5-foot scale, where each square is 5 feet. So a character that has a 30-foot movement speed like a human can move 6 squares and still act. Or you can take a double move and move up to 12 squares or 60 feet of movement, and you're pretty much done for your turn. Compare that to dragons that also have a land speed. They can walk, have a 40-foot speed, so they're just a little faster than people on the ground. But when they fly, wormlings have a fly speed of 60 feet, and the rest of the dragons are listed with a flying speed of 80 feet. 80 feet translates into 16 squares. And then they can still take their all their actions during combat. So they're showing the tactical advantage and speed that dragons have over humans and other normal playing character races by giving them this heightened movement speed. But This is where 5e starts to break down, because overland movement, that 30 feet of movement that a human has, translates into a 3 mile per hour overland speed. Or if you're hustling, it's 6 miles per hour while you're hiking. Compare that to the flying speed of a dragon. An 80-foot move speed translates into 8 miles per hour of overland movement. And so they're basically moving somewhere between 8 and 16 miles per hour with this 80-foot movement speed that ancient dragons have. But the problem is that we know that a normal crow in the real world has a flight speed somewhere between 30 and 50 miles per hour. And so if we were to translate 30 miles per hour back to D&D feet, that would be 300 feet per round. So while a character is trying to fight a dragon, you can move up to 6 squares and attack. This dragon is going to be able to move up to 60 squares and still be able to attack. So it will easily be able to strafe and outmaneuver any character that's on the ground, which makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't really lean into the fun of fantasy combat role-playing games. So they have a slow speed for dragons while you're engaging in combat at the 5-foot scale, but it doesn't really do anything to address high-speed overland movement that you would expect flying creatures to be capable of doing. So there's a gap in mechanics that takes us from the 5-foot scale of movement, where it's practical for us to engage in combat for the sake of fun with characters, to then shift into how are we supposed to have this heightened level of speed. So we're looking at the cover here, this image of the Dragonflight image cover. It's using artwork from the book cover Legend of Huma, which is one of the Dragonlance novels. And Dragonlance is famous for knights riding on the backs of dragons, and the knight with their dragon lance and the dragon that they're riding to work together to fight other dragons with their own dragon riders, using a mix of breath weapons, bite, claw, tail attacks, as well as the dragon lance and any other weapons that the rider has, and the breath weapons of the dragon, to have all these things work together to fight your opponents in the sky. And the way that it's depicted here in these novels is they're flying like at 30, 60 miles per hour while they're engaging in this combat. For us to be able to depict that at the 5-foot scale, we would need hundreds of squares worth of map. That's irrelevant to the combat at hand, because it's all happening maybe a mile in the sky, so far removed from the land that it isn't even a reference point anymore. So what we need to do is be able to depict 5-foot scale combat using all the tools, breath weapons, attacks, spells, movements that we expect to have in 5e D&D combat, but represent it at this heightened scale of movement of 30 miles per hour. So it's a matter of scale. Unfortunately, the D&D 5e game engine doesn't really work well at larger scales. It has a lot of attention spent at combat and exploration at the 5-foot scale, but if you expand beyond that, it doesn't really provide any mechanics to do so. Luckily, we've already built a document that provides that for you. It's published on the DMsGuild already, and it's linked down below, called Spelljammer, Combat and Exploration. There's a full preview, so if you click on the link down below and go to the page, it'll have a button underneath the cover. It'll say full preview, or if you're on a cell phone device, there'll be an eye icon that you can click that will open up the free preview that you can use to read along. This book is a deep dive into changing scale during combat. Spelljammer ships can move millions of miles per day, so they have a very fast per round movement that they can reach. Hundreds of miles per round of movement. That's far faster than we need to worry about a dragon flying at 30 miles per hour. So let's look at the mechanics that exist for Spelljammer and then deconstruct them so that they can work for characters and dragons during Dragonflight. So again, you can read along, checking the document here in the table of contents. Let's go down to scaling movement. We can see here that we have a breakdown in scale anywhere from 5 feet, 50 feet, 500, 1 mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles. And we know that dragons, if they're flying, say, at 30 miles per hour, that's going to have hundreds of feet of movement per round, which can translate into 50-foot squares of movement. Here's how this looks. If we're looking at just Spelljammer ships here, here's a hammerhead ship. It's 250 feet long, which is 50 squares at the 5-foot scale. Next to it is a warbird that's 50 feet in size. It fits in a 10 by 10 space at the 5-foot scale. But next to that here at the 50-foot scale, we can see that this 250-foot hammerhead vessel fits inside a 5 square space. While the warbird is a 50-foot ship, it fits inside of a single 50-foot square. So when we're transitioning from one scale to the next, like say here we're looking at the 50-foot scale between these two ships engaging with each other in combat. You can see here at the 50-foot scale, this is a single box here, and here's an adjacent 50-foot square with the 500-foot square with 500-foot space with 50-foot squares, a 10 by 10 space. So you see like this hammerhead ship here is occupying 5 squares. This one, if we zoom in, we can see that a warbird has flown from the enemy squadron onto the back of this hammerhead ship. Here's at the 50-foot scale, and we can see that it then zooms in to the 5-foot scale with troops disembarking from the warbird onto the deck of the hammerhead ship. So we're able to engage in the 50-foot scale here of overland movement, as well as engage at a different scale at the same time at the 5-foot scale, where characters can interact with other creatures of medium size, or at the 5-foot scale. So transitioning between these different scales here, we can see here we're looking at ships at the 500-foot scale. And as they intercept and become adjacent to each other at the 500-foot scale, it then zooms into the 50-foot scale, where we can see these two ships are now occupying close space to each other at the 50-foot scale. This Starmoth ship is launching warbirds to intercept and land on the deck of the hammerhead ship at the 50-foot scale. And once these ships have landed, you can see here at the 5-foot scale, again, soldiers are disembarking from the warbird at the 5-foot scale, where we can see at the 50-foot scale, these ships are flying in tandem together with these landing craft now disembarking troops at the 5-foot scale onto the deck of the ship. And we can furthermore look at scaling Here we're seeing at the 500-foot scale, we have a fighter skiff that's flying over this butterfly fortress. Each square is 500 feet. And as the ship descends to land on the fortress, we then see at the 50-foot scale, this small skiff is now finding a spot among these buildings to land. And then so we scale in again at the 5-foot scale. We now see that this skiff at the 5-foot scale has found a place to land among these buildings. Here at the 50-foot scale, here at the 500-foot, 50-foot, and then finally landing at the 5-foot scale. So now we can see that we can transition using movement from one scale to another by essentially shifting gears from the 5-foot scale to the 50-foot scale. And considering we're looking at dragons flying at 30 miles per hour, that's the maximum speed that we need to worry about moving from the 5-foot to the 50-foot scale. So how are dragons going to do that specifically? Well, we've taken all the information from Monster Manual 5e24 and basically put it into a table that will translate from the 5-foot scale depicted in the Monster Manual to the increased scale that we're discussing in this video. So just here's all the dragons, all the chromatic dragons, followed by all of the metallic dragons. They follow a similar pattern. We can see here wormlings are medium size, young or large size, adults are huge size, and ancient dragons are gargantuan size. Wormlings are like toddlers, while young dragons are like teens, adults are as such, and then ancient dragons, they don't get weaker as they age, they get more powerful. So the older, the more dangerous they become. So the move speed, the ground moving walking speed of a wormling is 40 feet, and its flight speed is 60 feet. And when it becomes young, it gains a ground move speed of 40 feet, and then a fly speed of 80 feet. And this remains static for the rest of their levels. Young or large, huge, and then ancient, giant, gargantuan. 40 feet, 80 feet. That's pretty much the standard once you get past wormlings. Their breath weapon, though, continues to gain power similar to their size as they age. So the breath weapon for wormlings, say a red dragon wormling, is 15 feet. That's a cone, while a young red dragon has a 30-foot cone, an adult red dragon has a 60-foot cone, and an ancient red dragon has a 90-foot cone. So those are your basic mechanics for the 5-foot scale of combat the characters are most likely going to be interacting with dragons at during adventures on a normal 5-foot square map. And nothing about that's going to change at all in this system. But the idea is that when the dragon takes off from the ground at the 5-foot scale, it takes flight and then needs to get some air before it can fully unfurl its wings and fly at overland movement. It has to sort of disengage from the ground that it was on to be able to lift itself up and then be able to outstretch and then really take off. So you have these two different gears that we've been talking about, the 5-foot scale and the 50-foot scale. So when a dragon is on the ground, it's going to use its first use of movement to fly, to lift off of the ground, to disengage from the 5-foot scale. And then it could take actions like to breathe fire on people underneath or whatever, but they're going to be within 80 feet. So they're close range to the ground. With their second move action, which can either be like a dash action during the same first turn, or if they're going to use actions this turn, they can then switch over on their next turn. The point is that their movement, their block of the movement action, whether it's a dash or just their normal movement action, is going to either be at the 5-foot scale or at the 50-foot scale. So you're going to transition between one or the other. If you're on the ground and you take off, you're using the 5-foot scale to get some distance from the ground. And then with your other move action, you're now going to move at the overland speed. So those overland speeds translate into 50-foot scale as just simple squares, knowing that each square represents 50 feet. So 2 squares of flying movements for a wormling, that's going to equate to roughly 100 feet of movement, which is faster than its 5-foot scale. The general rule is that if the 5-foot 5-foot scale is 25 feet or more, it's going to translate into 1 square. Because it's going to round up to 1 square. If it's less than 25 feet, it rounds down in that you can't, like if a wormling were to use it, were to be at the 50-foot scale, yeah, it could fly 2 squares per move action, but its breath weapon is so short that it actually has to be in the same 50-foot square as its target to actually affect it with its 15-foot reach breath weapon. Once it gets to 30 feet at adult age, it can reach 1 square, like to the adjacent 50-foot square, because it's more than half the square's distance. It'll reach the next square. And then at adult dragons with a 60-foot reach, that's more than 50 feet, so that rounds up to 2 squares. And then 90 feet, although it's certainly more than 60, it's still less than 100 feet, so it caps defaulting to, again, 2 squares of space. And as they age, their overland speed increases. That would be representing the need for a gargantuan creature needs a larger hunting ground than a young dragon would to be able to keep itself fed. So it needs to be able to fly further, faster, to be able to hunt a larger territory and control a larger area of space as its domain. So the overland fly speed increases in scale, and the breath weapon increases in scale as it ages. While when you re-engage coming in for a landing, to roost on something or just to land, you'll then shift from the high speed movement that you have, and then as another move action, switch to the 5-foot scale, and then drop down to touch land. You'll see this with birds. They come in fast, they splay their wings to slow down their momentum, and then they just touch and land on. They don't like come streaking in at full speed and grab the branch and stop. That would be jarring. So they slow down, which is represented by using a move action to shift into the 5-foot scale, and then touch ground with 0 movement at that 5-foot scale. So 0 speed, standing still, 5-foot speed to take off, and then as a separate move action, overland movement at 50-foot squares of movement. When you're coming in for a landing, you're already at the 50-foot scale of movement. You slow down with a separate move action to the 80 feet, or if you're a wormling, 60 feet of movement per round, and then you just touch ground and 0 feet for landing. Then you can walk or you can take off again. So you can switch between this high-speed 50-foot scale and the normal speed 5-foot scale by using separate move actions. You can shift from 5 feet to 50 feet, from 50 feet to 5 feet. Each shift in scale is a separate move action, either on separate turns as your normal move action or twice in the same round from 5 feet to 50 feet with separate move actions like move and then dash, or if you're already at the 50-foot scale, then to shift down to the 5-foot scale. So that's the transition point. But so let's see how that would actually look like in a map scenario. Okay, so in this scenario, we're going to look at a ancient red dragon, an adult brass dragon, and a young silver dragon. We can see that their sizes correspond. This is just a Roll20 virtual tabletop. Tokens provided by Roll20 using the artwork from the 5e24 book. Thank you for the contribution. Young dragons are size large, which we see here for the silver dragon. And adult dragons are huge, which you can see here for the adult brass dragon. And ancient red dragons, they are gargantuan size, 4x4 space, we can see here. You can see that we are depicting each of them inside of a 50-foot square space. The adult dragon, the ancient dragon, and the young dragon, each in their own squares respectively. So the brass dragon and the young silver dragon are hunting the ancient red dragon at the red dragon's lair. Here we see depicted at the 50-foot scale a lake of lava, a volcano that is active and pouring lava into this valley is here. We also have lava coming in from other volcanoes along here that pools in this lake, and then eventually outlets here further into terrain beyond the scale of this map. Each square is 50 feet. These are lines of elevation, and these lines, in this scenario, these lines of elevation are 500 feet. So here at the line of the lava, this is ground, pretty much zero ground. And then, so this is ground at the level of the lava. And then this ramp here, this is a 500-foot scale. So 50 feet from here to here is 500 feet vertically. So 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet. So this is an arena style. Once you get into it, because these creatures are moving at the 50-foot scale, it's going to take them multiple rounds to be able to climb out of this sunken in lava chamber that acts as an arena of combat for these creatures to engage in. What we see depicted here on the map is, again, this is a 500-foot scale difference between this square and this square. So this adult dragon and this silver dragon are coyly hugging the side of the wall, waiting for the ancient dragon to come through the lava through here and head towards this lair. And they don't know specifically where his lair is, but they think the lair is here in the middle. The DM knows that the dragon, it being immune to fire, is going to be able to fly down the chimney of the volcano to its underground lair located over here, but that's through a tunnel of lava tubes that it will have no problem getting to because it's immune to fire damage. The brass dragon, also immune to fire damage, could potentially pursue, but the young silver dragon is immune to cold damage and would be killed by being dunked in or swimming through lava for extended periods of time. So they're trying to catch the adult dragon before it's able to get into its lair. So if it doesn't succeed this time, it can at least force it to relocate or ambush it when it comes out of its lair in the future. So looking at the map scale here, we know an ancient red dragon, gargantuan in size, at the 50-foot scale, has 6 squares of movement per round and has a 2-square range breath weapon. It's a cone of fire. The brass dragon, adult, huge size, has a 5-square moving speed at the 50-foot scale. This is 30 feet. This is a 30 mile per hour, which could be a double move at 60 miles per hour. The brass dragon, a little bit slower, has a 25-mile move speed, and then as a double move can do up to 50 miles per hour. And then the silver dragon, the youngest of them, the smallest, has 4 squares, which equates to 20 miles per hour. And if it's hustling a double move, it can do a 40 miles per hour burst. The brass dragon has a cone that does 2 square. It has a 2-square range. And the silver dragon has both a cone, has 2 types of cones, both of which only have a 1-square reach. So in this scenario, if we're starting, say, with the dragon on map here, let's assume that the red dragon wins initiative and these guys are holding their actions until the dragon is within range for them to ambush. They need the silver dragon to keep up has to move 4 squares. The brass dragon needs to move 5 squares. The brass dragon needs to be adjacent to the red dragon at the 50-foot scale for its breath weapon to impact. And the brass dragon only needs to be within 2 squares of the red dragon for it to be able to hit with its breath weapon. Similarly, the red dragon only needs to be within 2 squares of either of them for its breath weapon to impact. So if we're taking an initiative and it's moving along 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, that would be 30 feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It comes around the corner. It's now in sight. This is when they take their action. From this situation, I just randomly moved along the way, heading towards home. Like no big business here, just heading home. And then the adult brass dragon impacts. It's got a 1, 2 square range. It can hit it with a breath weapon right away. And the young dragon actually has to move 5, 10 squares to get within reach, so it can use its breath weapon on the adult dragon here. If we're then looking, that's a very simple scenario. We've got breath weapons which operate at range, and we've got the dragons. What if they want to engage in physical combat? Well, this young silver dragon has gotten close enough to the ancient red dragon to be in adjacent squares. It's currently moving at the 50-foot scale. So now it's going to transition over here to, let's have these things swap places. Let's put the ancient red dragon in this one here. The silver dragon we're going to put up to here. And the brass dragon is switching over to here. It's 2 squares catty corner away. So yeah, it's located here. So shifting into the 5-foot scale, we can see where 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 feet away, but the dragon has a 10-foot reach, so only needs 30 feet of movement. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. It has to get to this square here to be able to impact this dragon here. Unfortunately, though, we're dealing with the movement. So it's already using its current movement to close distance at the 50-foot scale here. For it to then close full distance to be within melee range, it is going to have to use a second move action to switch the downshift into the 5-foot scale to then be able to close distance here to be able to take it on in physical combat. Since it only has one action left right now, it would instead prefer to use its breath weapon as a cone to be able to hit it. At the 5-foot scale, the silver dragon only has a 30-foot reach with its breath weapon. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Can't reach it. So staying at the 50-foot scale, the dragon has a 1 square reach with its breath weapon. So it's going to use its movement action to close distance here, and then it can use its breath weapon effectively here. The adult brass dragon itself, it can use the 50 at the 50-foot scale. It's already within breath weapon range at 2 squares. But if it were to then close distance using movement at the 5-foot scale, it's currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. At 15 squares, 1, 2, 3. At 15 squares, if it lands here, it's within melee range to be able to make attacks. It has an 80-foot flight speed, which translates into 16 squares. So the brass dragon here at the 5-foot scale can actually close distance to be here and within melee range. But it's ran out of action economy because it used one attack, it used one action for its breath weapon, and now it's using its movements to, at the 5-foot scale, close within range. What that looks like then at the 50-foot scale is it's now here in an adjacent square. If the ancient red dragon attempts to continue moving on its path, it's going to draw attacks of opportunity. It can use the disengage action to prevent attacks of opportunity and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares away, heading towards the volcano. And if the dragons want to, it used the disengage action, and now it's used its movement action. It's technically out of actions unless we consider the entire valley to be its lair, which you could, in which case you could give it bonus legendary actions like a better recharge rate, or maybe some extra attacks before it left, or maybe cast a spell for free as a legendary action. But if we're keeping things simple, disengage action, and then it moves 6 squares. Now our team needs to pursue. We're going to go, the young dragon has 4 squares of movement, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It's still out of range, so it's going to use its last movement to 1, 2. It's going to, again, 2, 3, 4. It's going to close distance and get ahead of the dragon so that it's helping cut it off, and will be able to, again, provoke opportunity attacks from it with its double move by moving into position. And the adult brass dragon has 5 squares of movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's back within melee range. It could breathe its breath weapon. I think it has a paralyzing or a sleep effect, I believe is what the brass dragon has. So it could breathe that effect onto the dragon, trying to affect it, forcing it saving throws, and that would end its turn. Or it could, again, it has another movement left. It could, again, choose to close distance to get close to the dragon. In this scenario, it would be, it would start here, and then it would have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 feet of movement well within its flight range, and again, be able to provoke opportunity attacks. If the attack of opportunity that they make, the brass dragon, for instance here, it can use its opportunity attack to attempt to grapple the adult dragon so it can't get away, which would then free up the young brass dragon to use its movement to then next turn close distance 10, 15, 20, 25 to then be able to start making attacks, bites, attacks, rending. And the brass dragon, having held it with a grapple, will give the young dragon opportunity, will give it an advantage on its attacks. The dragon will then have to waste an action to try to break the grapple, at which point, if it tries to get movement away from it, like we'll move the brass dragon here because it closed distance and attacked. The adult dragon, the ancient red dragon, if it wants to break free, it's going to have to use an action to break the grapple. And then it's going to either have to stand its ground and fight as usual, or it's if it wants to draw an opportunity attack from both of these again, it can then get some distance from them, provoking the OAs to be able to get some flight going. If it uses the disengage action, it's out of movement for the round because it already used an action to try to break the grapple. So these two opponents, even though they're slower, have less range, and have less size than the ancient red dragon, they're able to keep it engaged in aerial combat by using grappling, opportunity attacks to get those grapples off, even though they've used all their movement to keep up with it. The way that D&D reaction systems works allows you to use your opportunity attacks to try to stay on top of the dragon to keep it from getting away from you while you're attacking it, claws, fangs, spells, breath weapon, engaging in combat. So that's our 50-foot scale movement that can then transition into the 5-foot scale if you need. But for the most part, this battle can be conducted at the 50-foot scale. We can look at what do dragon riders look like when we add them to the back of dragons. Here's a look at what that can look like. We'll start here. We'll go through all of them, but the young silver dragon is large size. That's the same as a horse. Now we know that you can have 2 medium-sized creatures riding on one horse, and that horse is going to be burdened. For the dragon, we can take this is a howdah, a pavilion, or like a basket, or like a saddle system that sits on the back of the dragon to equip it with weapons. And so if we're looking at the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book, we go back to the table of contents here, and let's take a look at ranged ship weapons. We can see that we have ballista, which we'll be using, and harpoon flingers, which we'll be using. Harpoon flingers come from Descent into Avernus, and ballistas you can find in the DMG. So a harpoon flinger has a 120-foot range and a close normal range, and then a long range of 480 feet to fire at disadvantage. Does 2d8 piercing damage. So let's look at what we've built here. We have a harpoon flinger, 120-foot, 480-foot range. That's going to translate at the 50-foot scale. Since it exceeds 100 feet, but it's less than, it's 125 feet or less, that puts it at 3 squares, and rounding up 480 feet is a 10 square reach at the 50-foot scale. Similarly, a ballista also has a 124-80 range, 310. And so the range in 50 feet is 310, 310. And then the damage for these weapons, a harpoon flinger does 2d8 piercing damage, and a ballista does 3d10 piercing damage. The weapon properties that we've assigned to these siege type weapons, a harpoon flinger is sap, which means that the target will be at disadvantage on the next attack that it makes. Ballistas have the slow property, which means you reduce its speed by 10 feet, or in this case, it would be by 2 squares. And ammo, towing cables. So ammo is introduced here as ammunition that can be attached to different type of siege weapons. And in the case of towing cables are appropriate for harpoon flingers and for ballistas. That's bolt ammunition. So a towing cable is attached to a harpoon or a ballista, and when you deal damage using this ammunition, the target is grappled as though the ammunition is a piercing ram with a reach equal to the length of the cable. And so a piercing ram in this system is when you hit, they make a saving throw. If they fail, they become grappled, well, impaled or skewered by the ram, or in this case, by the ballista bolt or the harpoon that's flinged. It has a rope that's attached to it. So here we see the rope, the towing cable is 100 feet. And so this creature has essentially been grappled by you when you fire these weapons at it. And then, so it can't move beyond 100 feet, or in this case, 2 squares. So if the dragon gets hit by harpoon flings or ballistas with a 100-foot rope, it gets grappled and would go 2 squares away. This is the maximum distance that it would be able to get away from, say, the young silver dragon if the ancient dragon gets grappled by these bolts. It would have to use an action to break free of the ballista, of the tethers, and it would have to take an action with each one of them to break free. So you could quickly have a whole bunch of arrows, bolts, plunking into the side of this dragon, gumming it up with a whole bunch of ropes that it's attached to. That's going to take time for it to rip itself free of to be able to escape. Meanwhile, it's easily staying within range, 100 feet, of being able to keep up with it. Or you could even drag the ancient red dragon back to where you want to take it. So that's the real use of tethers, and this is going to allow that characters on the back of dragons to be able to assist. So we'll take a soldier token here and we'll drop that onto the harpoon flinger icon to indicate that it is equipped and utilizing that harpoon flinger. Similarly, we have the dragon lance that is attached to the riding saddle for this dragon. A light dragon lance is 30 feet, and that would be good for a creature of large or huge size. And a heavy dragon lance can be used by a creature that is huge or gargantuan size. So a light dragon lance, it has a 30-foot reach at the 5-foot scale, or effectively the adjacent square 1 square away at the 50-foot scale. And a heavy dragon lance is 40 feet long with still the same 1-foot square reach. The damage is 3d10 for a light dragon lance and 4d10 for a heavy dragon lance. It's piercing damage. And the property is topple, which we get from the player's handbook. Topple is when I hit with the attack, my target has to make a saving throw. It's going to be 8 plus proficiency bonus plus the ability modifier, in this case, strength, of the character that's equipping it. So if we look over here, we have our dragon rider, and the dragon rider is going to sit in the saddle where the dragon lance is attached. Now we have 2 characters that are riding on the back of this silver dragon, and this becomes the dragon with its dragon riders equipped to fly and attack at the 5-foot scale as well as now at the 50-foot scale. So the dragon is now freed up to use its action economy specifically to fly and to maneuver, disengage, dodge if necessary. It now has more options other than move and do I get to do a breath weapon or not? Should I make claw attacks or not? It now has a crew on its back that can be making these attacks, allowing this young silver dragon that on its own doesn't stand a chance against an ancient red dragon. But if all it has to do is focus on maneuvering, dodging, disengaging, and movements, it can let its crew on its back be relied on to, if it gets in close for an attack, then the rider, the rider in the saddle can make an attack with the lance to potentially hit and force the dragon to get toppled. And then because dragons in 5e24 don't have any kind of hover, it can't, if it gets toppled, it falls from the sky. And generally, you fall 500 feet during a round of combat. So this would fall, if you're under 500 feet away from the lava, it would fall into the lava. For the dragon, that would be deadly. For the silver dragon, that would be deadly because it's not immune to fire. But the ancient dragon is, so it would actually want to be toppled. So that doesn't really help. Dunking the ancient dragon into lava doesn't really help it, but it's a threat that the silver dragon needs to be aware of. So it needs to think about, am I going to get locked up with it and dragged into lava and killed? So it actually wants to keep its distance and rely on its crew on its back to be firing bolts and tethers to be able to slow the dragon down, while the huge-sized brass dragon, which is immune to fire, would be able to close quarters and get engaged and work with toppling and knocking it down. Because if it can fall into the lava, the brass dragon won't necessarily be harmed. Its crew on its back would be killed by it, but the adult dragon by itself, not necessarily. So if we're looking at the adult dragon, which is size huge, we're now seeing, here's two arrangements. We know about the dragon lance, and in this scenario, we're using a heavy dragon lance. So the dragon rider here in the saddle can use the heavy dragon lance as melee attacks. And then we have a crew of paladin soldiers that are riding along on the basket of it. In this scenario, we have a bunch of harpoon flingers. So we could have, say, 1, 2, 3 soldiers, and since this square is within 5 feet of the rider could potentially be using the harpoon flinger if it doesn't need to use the lance. So you can be firing off a whole bunch of tethers to lock into the ancient red dragon that you're chasing. Or if you're going with the ballista configuration, you'll be doing a lot more damage with the ballista, but you'll have less opportunities to engage, to tie it up with ropes. Because it takes three creatures to load and aim and fire a ballista during one turn. So during your dragon's turn, you can load up the soldiers and all your troops onto the back of the dragon here, or in this scenario here, you can drop this onto the dragon, and again, you are ready to go with your dragon crew on your back. And then we're looking at the ancient dragon, which is colossal size. So we have a dark rider here as the pilot, or in the saddle with the dragon lance. Again, another heavy dragon lance. And in this scenario, we have 4 harpoon flingers, and we have a ballista. So we could potentially have a big crew of, like, this could be like, say, Githyanki in the Astral, for instance. We could have a crew of 7 warriors on the back of this ancient red dragon of gargantuan size, and it has the ability to fire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tethers with a ballista bolt, a bunch of harpoon flingers, and the dragon lance. So you could see that, like, in a scenario where you're encountering Githyanki on the back of an ancient red dragon, if they've equipped it with a Warhawda, this becomes a really dangerous weapon, both in Spelljammer and in normal campaigns. So now that when we are engaging at the 50-foot scale of combat, we're looking at firing tethers, and if you're within 3, so if the dragon is within 1, 2, 3 squares, and here 1, 2, 3 squares, that's too far for the tethers to hit. So all we have to do is close 1 square of distance here with our allied dragons to then be able to have the crew on the back fire 1 from the small dragon and potentially up to 4 off of the adult dragon to sink a bunch of tethers into the adult dragon. So now it can't get any further away. 5, 10. Yeah, it can't get any way than 2 squares away. So now it's really easy for the dragons. Like, this one can use breath weapon on this range, but it can use breath weapon range on you here. The young dragon can hold its ground and can just continue to pepper it with additional harpoon flingers, or it could take the move action and disengage action to close distance, hit with the dragon lance, and then back out again. To potentially topple it, or just to deal extra damage, close distance, use a bunch. It doesn't necessarily want to use any claws to close into the distance to get to get grappled and potentially flung down into the fire. So the silver dragon is going to avoid that. It's going to keep its distance, keep the tethers on to keep it pinned. Meanwhile, the adult brass dragon can just lay into it, get up close and personal, use a move action. It can then engage with claws and bite attacks to start rending on the dragon, while its crew on its back can be firing a ballista bolt if equipped that way. The dragon rider in the saddle can be using the dragon lance to stab into the red dragon, or if it's using harpoon flingers, it's got multiple crew that can all be just firing a bunch of harpoons into the dragon. And with enough damage and enough tethers laid into it, again, they'll be able to then line up and drag the dragon off to where they want to go, away from its lair, to go serve justice, imprison it, or whatever it is that you do with miscreant dragons when you capture them. So this is a way for you to be able to utilize these mechanics and together at the same time at this 50-foot scale of movement to have this large-scale maneuvering. And also at the 5-foot scale to see how the dragon riders can be utilizing weapons and equipment on the dragon while they're riding them to assist in the dragon fight. So now we can have battles that are conducted at 30 miles per hour over land, while also respecting the mechanics of 5e combat using disengage, movement, grappling, dragging, toppling. All these mechanics still work both at the 50-foot and the 5-foot scale simultaneously using the system. So that's how Dragonflight works. 50-foot scale, overland combat at high speeds, fighting dragons, having dragon riders on the back of dragons, helping their dragon allies defeat the enemies in the skies. If you think this stuff is cool, I stream 9 times per week, artwork in the morning, game design in the evenings and in the afternoons. If you want to grab some of these assets, there's a link down below to my Patreon. You don't have to be a paying member to have access to this stuff, but if you want to join on, God bless you. I appreciate you, and the assets will be there for you to pick up. There's an entire playlist down below of other people on YouTube that are participating in Monster of the Week for 2025 for dragons. And there's also a bunch of links down below to other books that I've created on the DMsGuild, including Spelljammer, Combat, and Exploration. Check that stuff out. If you think it's cool, consider picking it up. Be welcome to reach out, ask any questions if you want. And thanks a lot. I really appreciate you.